So thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Progress Monitoring and its Applicability for Use in RTI. This is the sixth webinar in Brooks' RTI in Early Childhood webinar series and the first in our spring series. We're glad you're all watching. My name is Christina Davis and I'm a marketing manager on the Early Childhood team at Brooks Publishing. Our webinar today is presented by Dr. Susan Landry, who will address how the CIRCLE Progress Monitoring tool for pre-K classrooms informs effective instructional practices for at-risk students and helps to ensure teachers can provide quality instructional supports to all children in their classroom. Dr. Susan Landry, a nationally recognized expert in early childhood education, is the founder and director of the Children's Learning Institute. Dr. Landry's research into environmental factors that promote early cognitive growth and development led her to develop the framework for the Center for Improving the Readiness of Children for Learning and Education, which led to the implementation of the Texas Early Education Model, now known as Texas School Ready. Dr. Landry conducts numerous research projects and training activities promoting quality learning environments for young children. Her numerous research programs have generated a large research database on early childhood. More than 70 peer-reviewed publications and over a dozen chapters describe the findings of these research studies. She is currently involved in using the knowledge gained from years of studying young children to help promote the national goals of early childhood literacy initiatives. Now, I'm happy to turn it over to Dr. Landry for her much-anticipated presentation.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this webinar, and I'm really pleased to get a chance to share information about our progress monitoring tool. We've done a lot of recent work on it, so there's some new exciting additions that I'll get to share with you today. The tool is called CPALS, and actually now it's in a name transformation. It's been CPALS Plus because we added math, and we've recently added science, and we're not quite sure whether it should be CPALS Plus Plus or something completely different. But it was developed in response to a legislative action in 2003 in Texas that asked us at the Children's Learning Institute, which is also the State Center for Early Childhood Development in Texas, we were asked to develop a professional model or comprehensive system that would be research-based. We would have demonstrated evidence that what we put in place across Texas had shown effectiveness in changing teachers' behaviors as well as children's development, cognitive and social, and that it worked equally well whether it was in a Head Start program, a child care program, or a state public school pre-K program. And a number of research projects that were could be done because of competitive federal funding led us to a model that included CPALS in addition to a state-adopted curriculum, a very comprehensive professional development system that's web-based and has 17 modules or courses that are facilitated in groups of 15 across the state, 15 teachers with a facilitator, and then we found from the research there was an added benefit of teacher coaching. So that's the comprehensive model of the Texas School Ready project. And in 2,500 to 3,000 classrooms each year for the last 10 years, this is the model that's used. We developed this system because we're strong believers in early identification of learning needs and information that can help teachers group children according to their learning needs to maximize the impact of their instruction. The teachers use CPALS to screen all of the children in their classroom at the very beginning of the year, and then they do it again mid-year and again towards mid to later spring. And with the initial assessment, they have information early in that school year to group children and to get good information about those children in their classroom who need more intensive or differentiated instruction, usually in small groups. The training of the Texas School Ready professional development modules provides them with information on how that instruction should look with the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 children. They're also trained in how to use assessment to identify over time children that might need further, more individualized instruction in a Tier 1 approach. CPALS now assesses directly vocabulary, letter knowledge, phonological awareness, 3 areas for early literacy, and those were the first 3 areas that were part of CPALS when it was developed in 2003. Then we added math assessment, and just this January, an early science assessment has been added. There's also observational assessments that currently include social, emotional skills, emergent writing, and print concepts. And I'll talk in a minute about some additional observation and direct assessments that will be added this summer. Again, as you can see, we have 5 areas of direct assessments, and there's a couple screenshots here. One of the operations math item, if you have 5 butterflies and 2 fly away, how many butterflies would be left? And then another one on the phonological awareness alliteration task. So now I'm going to go into each of the areas. First, the direct assessments. The rapid letter naming uses a fluency paradigm. So the teacher has this is in a technology platform. It's also available on paper pencil approaches. It's in Spanish and it's in English. The teacher, when we first rolled this out, the teacher had this on a PDA. They would be seeing what to ask and how to score and when to move forward. The child was always looking at a flip book of these letters or vocabulary, as you'll see in a minute. Now, over time, teachers have computers and iPads, and in most of the settings, the children are seeing the stimuli on that technology platform, and the teacher is also seeing what he or she is supposed to ask. For letters, they're non-sequential, but the same for all children. They are not all uppercase. They are uppercase and lowercase. The teacher knows that she has 60 seconds. The idea is how many letters can the children name in that period of time, so that she doesn't or he doesn't stay on one letter and lose a lot of time. If the child does not give a response in 3 seconds, the teacher is cued to move forward. She scores a correct or an incorrect response, or moves forward if there's no response. Rapid vocabulary naming task is also a fluency paradigm. Again, 60 seconds. We looked carefully at the national word list to identify what vocabulary was appropriate in this age range, and also what could be pictured so that children would not be confused by the picture. And so the teacher's basically asking the child, what is the name of this picture? And these are black and white drawings. We've recently done an extensive amount of revamping of this assessment with a lot of feedback from our teachers as to what were items they felt that weren't pictured as well as they might be, and we re-examined some vocabulary words that teachers felt were not clear or appropriate, and did some more updated validation. The phonological awareness task or assessment is 7 sub-areas of phonological awareness, and you can see they include listening, rhyme, alliteration, sentence segmentation, syllabication, and blending of onset rhyme. 1 total score across these 7 areas is given. However, you'll see in a minute some of the reporting systems of this CPALS allows the teacher to see how the children did at the end of the assessments in each of these sub-areas. The early math also includes 7 subdomains: rote counting, shape, naming and shape discrimination, number, discrimination and naming, set counting, and operations. Operations, the example I showed you before, if you have 5 butterflies and 2 fly away, how many do you have? Here you see examples of items for rote counting, number recognition, which one is a number when they see 4 stimuli, point to all of the triangles as one item under shape recognition, and an item in counting or set counting. Count these trees and then tell me how many there are. We have put an extensive amount of time in the last year in developing an early science assessment as part of the CPAL system. It measures knowledge in physical and life sciences as well as earth and space sciences, and there's engineering and technology applications. So along with math, it's really a comprehensive STEM screening assessment, progress monitoring assessment. This is an item at the top. This is a magnet, the teacher would say, and then points to the lower 3 options. Which of these would be attracted to the magnet? And then at the bottom you see an item. When you want to build a tower, the teacher would say, that won't fall down, which block is the best one to put on the bottom? So that summarizes our direct assessments to date. We are going to add a direct assessment of social studies in the near future, and maybe at another time, in another webinar, I can tell you all about that one. For observational assessments, we currently have social studies, which has been expanded to also include, I'm sorry, not social studies, social and emotional skills, book and print concepts, and emergent writing. And these are all set up so that the teacher spends time in those first weeks or month or so of school on the beginning of the year assessment, making ratings of what they observe the children are doing in these areas, doing or seem to understand. Social skills has been recently expanded and validated to not only include just social competence, but now also regulation of emotions, emotional understanding, some approaches to learning, items, persistence, attention, as well as some independence in terms of skills related to hygiene. So it's a much more comprehensive look that aligns well with, for example, the Head Start social approaches to learning constructs. You see a couple items from this assessment that the teacher will be rating on a 5-point scale. The book and print concepts is under expansion. There are 12 items now. It's being validated against a subscale on the TOEFL having to do with print and book concepts. But you can see sort of the typical describe what an author does, hold the book correctly, looking at the child's understanding of print goes from left to right. And a number of these things the teacher might actually have to ask the child about or have the child demonstrate to them so that they get direct information from each child. The emergent writing is 11 items that really has the teacher pay a close understanding, a close observation and understanding of how is the child progressing from the beginning of the year skills to middle of the year to then mid, late spring in their ability to make letter-like forms, moving to real letters, etc. Now I'd like to talk for a few minutes about the reporting that is included in CPALS Plus. You see here that we have 5 types of reports. There's a student summary, and then an expanded student summary, assessment summary, how to group children based on their skill areas, and a class summary. So in the student summary, the teacher is seeing for each individual child from beginning assessment to middle of the year to end of the year, how the child is doing in each area, direct as well as indirect assessments. These are benchmarked related to studies we did with norm reference assessments. If the child is in the developed or appropriately developed age range, they are shown as green, and if they're just emerging or below, they're shown as red. As you see here under the PA composite, phonological awareness, for the subtest, because that's a total composite score, but the teacher can see that there's information on where they are through a bar graph on each of these subdomains. In the expanded summary, they see a list of skills sorted by the child's strong areas as well as their weaker areas, and activities from the CIRCLE Curriculum Activity Manual, which some classrooms use as their only curriculum. Other public schools, Head Start, use usually a curriculum off the adopted list, but they are trained in the CIRCLE curriculum activities, and then the hope is from this information through CPALS, they will use the CIRCLE activities, and then for more activities they'll generalize these to their larger curriculum. Then they get an assessment summary, and this actually shows them, you see here, letter knowledge. What did the child know? Which letters were incorrect, and which letters, because it's 60 seconds, was the child not specifically asked. And that gives the teacher a lot of information about how to put their instruction practices together for each child and how to group children. And then they get a group summary, and they see student groupings. This is, telling them, as you can see under letter group, that Roy and Ramsey Wells needed more attention in letter sorting and matching. And here's the activity they should try with those kids: name sorting, letter sorting and matching, and try the name chart. And so they're given specific things to do out of a curriculum activity manual that then when they run out of those, they can go to other curriculum resources they have. And then they have, of course, a class summary that gives them all of the children in their class and gives them information across all skill areas, and as they add new assessments across the year, of course, they see that information. So I'll come back to questions later about that. I know I'm moving quickly, but there's a lot of information that we've gathered about this that I want to share with you. This next section looks at what we have done to validate the instrument. What publications do we have that describe the effectiveness, and some modeling we've done, and particularly with phonological awareness. So I'm going to start with one of the big studies we did. It's published in a 2009 Journal of Education publication. It was to address a legislative request that we find something that would support teachers to get children school ready, whether they were in child care settings, Head Start settings or public school settings, and that ultimately would be used across the state in all these settings with some additional new state support so that parents could know whether their child was in any one of these settings, the child was getting a program that had been proven to work. And it, as you can imagine, it was addressing this question of teachers in these different types of setting having different amounts of educational training. As childcare is typically not a four-year degree teacher, at the time we did this, Head Start was rarely much more than a 2 years of college, and then our public school, which was all Maryland, was all degree teachers. Ohio was Head Start, all Head Start. Florida was all child care, and Texas was a balance of all three. In all of those states, we took all the recruited teachers and randomly assigned them to 5 groups. One group was business as usual. 4 groups got the web-based professional development modules that cover language, literacy, math. Now they include science, assessment techniques, RTI and pre-K, social-emotional. It's been expanded greatly since the study. The emphasis at this point was on language and literacy and support for organizing classrooms and supporting children to learn routines. And in the 4 groups that got randomly assigned to get the professional development modules, 2 were randomly assigned to get CPALs on a platform, so they got all of that reporting and grouping and activity information immediately, and 2 conditions got it paper pencil, where they had to score and they had to make decisions themselves. And then in each of those 2 groupings, there was a coach versus a no coach condition. And basically, if you go to that study, you'll see that the 4 groups that got the web-based professional development all did better than the business as usual. And it didn't matter whether they were teachers in child care, Head Start, or public school pre-K. But the condition that got the most comprehensive or best results for the children's learning was the comprehensive web-based professional development, CPALs on a platform, plus coaching. And we've since added to that a state-approved curriculum. Then we tested that comprehensive model out in random assignment study compared to business as usual in 11 Texas cities and towns where we randomly assigned half the teachers in each of those communities to get the comprehensive program, PD, CPALs, coaching, and curriculum, or not get it business as usual. Again, we found strong results of teacher change in the Texas School Ready program and child change, and that has been published in Journal of Writing Quarterly. The cut points that we developed, I showed you in red and green, came from a series of studies we did over the years where we had data on CPALs as well as data on norm reference testing. And as I mentioned, this is English and Spanish, and we've been able to break it down from 3.5 to 4-year-old children, 4 to 4.5, and 4.5 to above. We also have looked, as you can see here, at, with norm reference information compared to CPAL's subtest, the vocabulary, validity. We've looked at print knowledge and letter knowledge from the TOEFL, and the Developing Skills Checklist has helped us out also in looking at correlations with these different subtests that are part of CPALs in relation to these norm reference tests. And for example, you can see that in the bottom table, the spring bottom table, one word vocabulary, expressive vocabulary, had a correlation with CPAL's vocabulary of 0.45, which was somewhat higher than EOW with letter knowledge, although phonological awareness, which is very closely aligned or correlated with vocabulary, also has a moderate correlation. Print was strongly correlated with letter knowledge, print from TOEFL with letter knowledge from CPALS. So we continue to update our technology manual. These are tables that come out of that manual to look at relationships between CPALS subtest and these different norm reference tests. The science validation has looked at these relationships with a new science, comprehensive science norm reference assessment with our CPALS, and we're getting some very nice results there. To look at phonological awareness and was there justification for a composite score, and the separate 7 subscales, we did some structural modeling and found that we do have evidence that there is a single phonological awareness construct, but that these different sub-areas, onset rhyme, rhyming, alliteration, syllabication, segmenting words and sentences, all provide some unique information that to that single construct. So, as a wrap-up, we are continuing to refine, expand this progress monitoring tool, which actually I like to refer to as a progress monitoring system because of the reporting, because of the links to grouping information, the links to activities that would work to build certain skills for different learning needs. We are expanding it in part to meet some of the demands and requests of different types of early childhood settings like Head Start and frameworks from those settings that require a number of skills be assessed. We're trying to keep adding more information that gives teachers immediate, seamless sort of guidelines about how to improve their instruction and how to individualize it. We're building a library of video exemplars that link to the CIRCLE activities. So if the teacher now is using a CPALS system and has the CIRCLE activity, she can also go online, and if she's told to do this letter knowledge activity with these 3 children, she can actually go into that online program and see a teacher implementing that particular CIRCLE activity, or a phonological activity in alliteration, or a science activity with a group of children. So that's under development, but we're probably 85% along the way, and it becomes available this fall. We're trying to maximize how this system can really support children that are identified as being most at risk in pre-K before they get into kindergarten and early elementary grades and start to fall behind. And we found that in our experience across public school settings where you have degree teachers, Head Start, versus child care where you have your least educated or lower educated typically, and not always least experienced, but sometimes, although we see least experienced across all of these different delivery settings. That this is a system that provides a lot of support, almost a technology mentor for teachers that have not had a great deal of experience at this point in their careers, their teaching careers. So this slide gives you some information on webinar, and Christina?
Yes. So as you probably know, this webinar is part of our RTI webinar series in the spring, which is a continuation of our webinars from this past fall that some of you may or may not have joined us for. So the lineup for this spring is, the next one is going to be May 6th, and that's on tiered instruction, and that's presented by the editors of the handbook, Virginia Bicey and Ellen Peisner-Feinberg. And then later on in May, mid-May, it's going to be a webinar on embedded instruction. And the following one to wrap up will be on preschool inclusion. So you'll see the link there to sign up if you are interested. I encourage you to register. And even if you can't join the webinars on those dates, I still encourage you to register because you will get a link to the recording. And that link will also be sent in the follow-up email should you not have time to jot it down really quick. So don't worry if you miss it. Then you can just advance to the next slide and we can tell them about the discount. So, you know, as part of joining this webinar today, we're offering a 20% discount on the Handbook of Response to Intervention, which further expands on all of our webinar presentations. So if you just jot down the code RTIEC20, you can get 20% off of this handbook and then other practical resources that you'll see come through in the follow-up email. So that's all I have to say. I think we're going to turn to a couple of questions that we received. And so we'll turn it back to Dr. Landry. So the first one is, how important is it that an assessment be comprehensive in terms of covering a broad range of skill areas?
Well, that's a great question. You know, it's been a journey for us, as you might be able to tell from this presentation. We started with the early literacy areas because when we started, there was a lot of focus on trying to encourage early childhood settings for 3- and 4-year-olds to start incorporating language building activities, letter knowledge, phonological awareness, early writing. But as time has gone on in this field, we started to realize, everybody across the country, that, wait a minute, math is another very important area to include in our instructional practices and experiences in these settings. So we added math, and then very recently, you know, the message has come through that STEM, so not just math, but also science, technology, engineering. So then, you know, Head Start is very comprehensive, more recently especially, in what they are requiring, and they want to see social studies, physical development, arts, creativity, approaches to learning. So our new offerings on the CPALS++++ program will be, by the end of the summer, social studies, physical development, and arts and creativity, some direct assessments, and some observational. So I guess we have decided that the field is really asking for something that's comprehensive, but at the same time, time efficient, and something that very immediately can inform teachers' instruction and gives them information without requiring them to turn things in to an administrator, to wait for it to be scored, to wait for a committee to help them figure out what to do with that data. I'm in a lot of public school classrooms, for example, where they're using very cumbersome, long assessment system and then not having any information a week later, a month later, about what came out of that assessment time and what should they do next. And then they're ready to do a middle of the year using the same very long, hour and a half, 2 hours a child, direct assessment, and they still haven't gotten information from the beginning of the year assessment. So that's a very important balancing act, I think, in what we're using and providing as resources in these early childhood settings.
Great. And what type of support do teachers need to make effective use of this progress monitoring system?
Well, our experience has shown us there of course has to be technology support. So there has to be someone or someone's, on call and responsive immediately when they get stuck with the technology management of this. So tech support is critical, and in an immediate fashion, not a day later even. But the other area we're finding that they need support is in really, while this system gives them hopefully very clear information about groupings, about what the data means, about some activities, we're finding many teachers need additional input from a coach or a mentor, which can be provided through face-to-face individual classroom visits, through face-to-face group visits, or we are also finding it's very effective to do this remotely. But you do have a fairly large subset of teachers that need that extra support.
And we have a few specific questions on the CPALs. Is it available to parents of young children who are interested in getting their child school ready, even if they are not attending a Head Start or an early child care program?
I believe it is. That hasn't come up very much, but it's a very user-friendly system, and I'd be happy to talk to a parent that's interested.
Okay, great. I will definitely connect you two. Because we had another asker who asked how to access the tool, so I will connect you both with Dr. Landry. And then another specific question on CPALs is how many different progress monitoring probes are there, and is it recommended that progress monitoring be done weekly or biweekly, or how frequently?
Well, our recommendation and our practice in classrooms using this that we're supporting is that it be done beginning of the year, as early as the classroom is settled down, they know the kids are there to stay, and then that information that comes out of it be used to guide instruction for the next several months. Then they do it again right after the Christmas holidays, and then they do it again around the first week or so of April, so that the end of the year assessment information can be made, they can make use of that. We also strongly recommend curriculum-linked weekly or every other week, a shorter, more targeted checklist of children's growth and knowledge and skills, so that they're not doing this comprehensive system more than 3 times a year, but they are doing shorter, more targeted paper pencil checklist of their different learning groups' progress.
Okay. And you actually had a slide of 5 research-based designs, and one of our participants wants to know if you can share again what the 3rd research-based design was, if you can either back it up or...
The research that was published?
Yes.
The journal, I think they might be referring to the 2009 publication in Journal of Educational Psychology, where there were 5 groups, randomly assigned groups. One of the 5 got business as usual, so we did nothing except assess the teachers and children. And the other 4 all were randomly assigned to get our web-based facilitated professional development modules. And of those 4, 2 got CPALs with the immediate information from a technology system, and 2 of the 4 got paper pencil. And then 2 of the web-based or the platform CPALs groups one got a coach, 1 didn't, and of the paper pencil, 1 got a coach, 1 didn't. And what we found was we found that the professional development modules, all 4 conditions that had that, were better than business as usual. But the one that did the very best of the 4 had the coach and CPALs on a technology platform.
Can the CPALs be used to assess kindergarten readiness by kindergarten teachers?
We are talking to a lot of school districts who are lacking an assessment system that they can use at the very beginning of kindergarten. One, it helps them address, are the children ready for kindergarten? Because they're coming in from so many different types of experiences. And one, it allows them to know if they put in place a system that helps them link it to where the child was when they were 4 years old, prior to entering K, what different settings need more support and attention, so that they're going to get kids ready for K. And in showing them this, which we do at the end of pre-K now, there are many school districts that are showing a very strong interest in using this because it's comprehensive, it's short, and it's been validated against norm reference tests. So we feel it could be quite effective as a very beginning kindergarten readiness assessment.
Great. So what about future considerations? Do you have any goals for this progress monitoring system?
Well, we are adding these new assessments that I mentioned, social studies, physical development, etc., in part to address the request from the field. We are really, we think it's very important to build this system in ways that it provides professional development for teachers, and that's why we will have it linked to this video library of exemplars of activities to do to build the different skills for children needing more extra attention, as well as children that need to be advanced to the next level. Those are 2 big goals at this point.
Okay, great. So I think that we have wrapped up majority of our questions. I think, like I said, I need to connect you with some of our listeners. One last important thing was asking about the CPALs and its use for children with disabilities. Is it applicable to children with disabilities, even with those with severe and complex disabilities?
Well, it can be adapted. The range of skills is certainly quite broad. And so children with cognitive impairments, I think it can be very useful with. There is a pencil paper version which allows, for example, the teacher to take away the timing component. If they're just trying to get some information, let's say on the words that children know, the vocabulary, or the letters, and they don't want the high demand of the time fluency paradigm. There, of course, if the flip book is used, there are various approaches to allow children to identify their response without requiring a complex motor movement. So I think because of the broad range from, things that are appropriate for maybe kids in the 2-year developmental range up into the upper 5-year, older 5-year range, cognitive impairment, and then motor impairment, because it can be adjusted or adapted. I think it can be used with kids with special needs.
Great. So before I wrap up the webinar, I just wanted to ask if you have anything else you'd like to add.
No, I don't think I do.
Okay, great. So on behalf of...
Appreciate the time and opportunity
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
to talk with everybody.
Yes,
And
so...
if anybody wants more information or to directly sort of talk to us about it, we have a very comprehensive website on the University of Texas website, which is right here on the screen, www.childrenslearninginstitute.org. There's a lot of information on the Texas School Ready and the CPAL system.
So on behalf of our expert presenter, Dr. Landy, and all of us at Brooks, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And I do hope to see you on one of our webinars in May.